our episode today of Between Two Teachers. And I am Consuelo Lara. This is...
I'm Madeline Cronenberg.
And we are here in the sacred land of...
Chochenyo Karkin Ohlone.
Yes. So we have several things we want to start with, announcements and special events.
Well, I'm gonna start with an acknowledgement that sort of follows our acknowledgement of the Native peoples who preceded us here, and this is happening in Wisconsin. This isn't sort of when we look at national news. In Wisconsin right now, they're continuing something that started in a lot of different places to eliminate the Native American mascots that are used in so many schools and for teams. And the person who is working to do that is a young woman, a Native American woman, who is on a school board in Wisconsin. And she is now also running to be the third Native American woman who would serve in Congress, in the House of Representatives. So there is currently a congressional member from New Mexico and one from I think Nebraska, who are both serving, and so she would be from Wisconsin. So her name is Tricia Zunker, and I just wanted to do a shout out to Ms. Zunker for her work in retiring. Her term is, and she's right, her board has passed a resolution to retire Native American mascots in Wisconsin, which we certainly should do in California. I'm not sure if we still have any left here, but it makes a lot of sense. And so that's national news. The international news, which there actually is international education news today, because today is International Day of Education. And the United Nations has declared that. They have something called the Sustainable Development Grant, a goal, Sustainable Development Goals. And goal number 4 is education, a free education for everybody on the planet, for all of us together. And today's the day there were opportunities. They did some events in Europe, and I think they did one at the UN in New York too. So there's that. And then the only thing closer to home before we get all the way close to home is Long Beach. Long Beach has one of the longest running superintendents in the country.
Yes.
And he has announced his retirement. He is moving on. I would guess he's going to become a consultant of some sort because he's got a lot to share. He had enormous success.
Lots of success, absolutely.
Enormous success. But they are now looking at how they're going to go about their search for a new superintendent. And one of the things they said, they've had a little controversy because the process is always controversial because there are choices you have to make. And one choice they've made is not to go outside of California, which is an interesting choice because Long Beach would be a place that lots of people would want to come to, right, from outside the state.
Yeah.
But they're going to restrict it. And they are not going to hire a company, a search firm. They are going to do it internally.
Yeah. Hopefully they find somebody inside who's been rising.
Well, he's been there to mentor them for 18 years.
Yeah.
And Mr. Steinhauser started as a teacher in Long Beach.
I love those.
Homegrown. Homegrown guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're obviously keeping that same attitude in their search.
It's a value. It's a value.
Exactly.
And then before we get to the district, we could talk about almost the same thing in the county board of supervisors.
County board at the county clerk's office, the county recorder's clerk's office, in charge of elections.
Yes.
Right. We had the opportunity the other day to go to the board of supervisors meeting in the county. Essentially, we were there in the earlier part of the day to take part in the Martin Luther King Day celebration, which was a wonderful celebration. And the keynote speaker was the interim police chief from Richmond, Bisa French.
Yes.
And it was very moving. And in the afternoon, as luck would have it, there was the day that the County Board of Supervisors interviewed and then, to our surprise, is actually
Deliberated
decided,
and voted.
publicly deliberated and voted on a new interim. This person, it will be acting county recorder, and this the person who is selected was going to be selected for 3 years because Mr. Cansamia, who is now no longer there, had that much time left on his term. And interestingly, there were 5 applicants that were publicly interviewed, and in the end, they chose the person who started there as an executive secretary in 1990,
Yep.
Miss Cooper, Deborah
Yes.
Cooper.
Shout out to
So
Deborah Cooper.
congratulations to Deborah Cooper. We were impressed by your interview as we sat there and watched, and we thought the process was really it was a very transparent process when you look at it.
And shout out to Mr. Glover. He did a
Mr.
good job
Glover, who-
talking about this is
Yeah,
what
it was a
we
split
need.
vote.
It was interesting vote.
Mr. Glover, Ms. Mitchoff, and Ms. Anderson were the 3 who voted for
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
So I thought that was a very positive thing, and we worked closely with them in a lot of different ways. And
Right.
they have something in their office called PEEPS, which is very unique in their elections office, where they are concerned about bringing in people of color, organizations from the community to be involved in, elections, and making sure that the unrepresented, underserved, or that they reach out to them and can be increase the voter registration in those areas and the
Right.
voter participation in those areas. So it was good. Actually, every candidate mentioned that.
They
So,
did.
They had different ways of looking at it, but
Yeah, and they were different.
Yeah.
There were 2 candidates, Ms. Cooper and then another gentleman from that office were interviewed, and the other candidates were not from the office. They were from the outside and brought different sets of strengths with them.
yeah. And shout out to our friend who invited us, Joan Carpenter. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Oh, gosh.
We're so glad that you're back for at least a short time to
Yeah.
visit with us.
That was a nice little
It
trip.
was. It was an interesting day. So
Okay.
the next thing is we should speak to Measure R. Measure R right here, which is our school bond measure, and we're starting to. People are going to get flyers regarding it very soon. We're collecting endorsements. Nancy Skinner has endorsed. Buffy Wicks has endorsed. Tony Thurmond has endorsed. These are our most important leaders right now from us locally, and we're in the process of collecting endorsements from other elected officials, like Rochelle Pardue Okamoto, who's one of the very first
Yes.
to
Yes.
step up and endorse.
Yeah, and it is a facilities bond to address modernizing and upgrading our schools, the schools that have not yet been addressed. So, such as Fairmont, for instance, really needs to, because of the growth that's happening in El Cerrito. That's a big one there. So there's a lot of different projects, and I believe facilities master plan is on the agenda this coming. I think I saw that.
Is
So
that on
there's-
the agenda
Yeah,
too?
there's going to be some kind of presentation there. So, but this is a very much, I think, a social justice issue for us, because we really have some people who are strongly against this and coming out aggressively against Measure R. But what confuses me is these taxpayers are not from around here. They're from Walnut Creek or Danville or Pleasant Hill, and they are spending money here to defeat this. And the important thing to note is that this district is predominantly children of color and predominantly children of poverty. So why would these outsiders come and want to stop some facilities for these children in particular? That's the problem I have with this. And so for me, I know I have to fight for these children and to make sure that they get the best schools possible. And so, it just baffles me.
And not just the taxpayers. Many of the taxpayers who speak may be local taxpayers, but let's just say it, the
newspaper, which is out in.
Right, and the editorial was certainly not written by a member of our community.
Or has children here,
Yeah.
goes to school, who go to our local schools, but yet they just love to just trash and attack, any ways that we want to have success. Yes, it's going to take money. It takes money to maintain your house. If you own a house, it takes money to maintain your car. Everything, you need to upgrade. And we've had a lot of success. Some of our schools are just beautiful. We've got beautiful schools up in the hills and down in the lower areas. But we still have, there's like over 50 schools. And you constantly have to be modernizing, upgrading, etc. We're looking at things like air conditioning.
Climate change.
That's a very big one.
We are not immune to climate change.
Yes.
And climate change is one of the big reasons for Yes on R, because we have 33 schools that meet the requirements of needing additional air conditioning, so that on those days that there are hot days, when we have hot schools, that our children and our staff can turn on some air conditioning and have some relief, and not have to wind up becoming sick and go into the hospital, which we have had happen. So this is an issue around health and safety for our children, as well as making sure that you can't learn. This is about learning. You can't learn in hot schools. You can only learn in schools that are built to support your ability to learn and to be healthy. And that's what we're trying to do. Have our schools be healthy, learning environments, so that they can create the strongest academic results that they possibly could.
Absolutely. I consider it a health and safety facilities bond, really.
Right.
That is really for teachers as well as the students.
And for learning.
For learning.
It's about learning.
It's all about that.
So that's Measure R.
That's Measure R.
And the other thing about Measure R is it gets conflated with our other budget issues.
Oh, that's true. People think they're all one pot.
And they're not at all.
So a bond, facilities money that comes in through a bond is held totally, separate from our operating budget, which is through ADA. And the operating budget, as many of you probably know, we are in a deficit, as are many districts in the state. We didn't invent a deficit, for public education. It's been getting chopped for decades and decades, and so we are in this situation. The facilities bond is overseen by, of course, the business manager and also our CBOC, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And they keep very close watch on this money that would come through Measure R. So those are two separate financial pots of money, process, all of that. You can't use this money for salaries.
Yeah.
And that would be a whole different situation. So that kind of says it, right?
Right.
It's
That says-
two different things.
It's two different things. So
Okay.
if you need more information on Measure R, there's a Yes on R, the Yes on R campaign has begun. There'll be mailers coming to your home soon. And if you're interested in getting a beautiful sign like this, we can provide it and send you to the Yes on R website. I'll link to the Yes on R website in our comments under in YouTube.
Okay, very good. CTE. So we want to talk about career and technical education. It's one of the things, one of our pet projects is to really enhance and strengthen our pathways, our academies, as they were called. And that is, for me, what it means is not every child is going to go to college, but every student is going to need a job. And so in addition to, I'm not saying either or, in addition to getting those A to G, how about preparation for a job? And so everybody sees the need for this. And it's just like everything else, things are getting cut. And this is an area that needs to be strengthened, because this is what something truly preparing the students for their future, so they can get a job, so they can work. And there are jobs. We just have to make sure that we're preparing them for the jobs that are out there. So, given that there's a task force and we're working for this, we've got some dedicated CTE teachers we met with. Oh my gosh, they are, like most teachers, doing miracles with pennies. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot from them.
Right, but we also learned that our program is shrinking, and there are many reasons for it. I mean, even before we got to the budget crisis, which is going to have some other things shrinking very soon, it's part of it is that a lot of the CTE, the delivery of the program, rests on the shoulders of a teacher, and if a teacher leaves, they leave with them. With them goes their network of support, their network of industry advisors, and sometimes with them goes the entire academy. It just shuts down. So we used to, at one point we had 21, and now we have 13. That's a big loss in academies. It is a big loss. So we need to really look at new ways to support our CTE teachers, to recruit CTE teachers, and to develop, as Mr. Whittier has said many times, the management skills necessary. Or to provide those management skills so that the teachers don't have to do that on top of everything else. Because their stipends now are at risk.
Risk, exactly. You know, and as the fifth biggest economy in the world, California is. So I'm hopeful, because I know that there's industry out there, and like, again, Ron has said, they just haven't been asked, you know, so we are really pushing for that inclusion of getting more industry partnerships to help us with this area. And so I'm pretty hopeful.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it.
We're working on it, and we have to go back and connect again with the chambers, right? And to partner with industry, rather than to just always ask them what can they do for us. Ask them what they need us to do for them.
Yes, exactly. What role does, this kind of schools play for you, for sure. Okay.
And now to the budget.
Oh dear. Do we have to?
We have to say something
about the budget.
About the budget.
Okay. Well, they are deep in negotiations right now about that, and negotiations cannot be done in public. People are asking a lot of questions. There's some things that can be shared, a lot of things cannot, because it's not set in stone. So you don't want rumors can easily start, and it's already contentious at times, and we don't want to add to that. But
but there is a March 15th layoff day. I mean, there's information that is very public.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody who's in education knows March 15th is the layoff date. And everybody who's in any district anywhere, or who's just simply lived through the Great Recession in 2010, is very aware of the fact that layoff notices come out then. And what we have is a situation which happens in every district that goes through this, where people need to be they need to be given some confidence about how things are going to be handled. And we have had shared with us the stages of grief, but I'm not so sure that the stages of grief are the appropriate direction for us. I think what we really need is, rather than looking at the stages of grief, partnering with in a much more transparent way. Because what I find that happens with the district and any district, is everything you're not saying, as they are holding things back, and we're going to not share this out, everybody is in fact imagining the worst.
The worst.
And you're creating that by not sharing.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're not seeing the level of sharing of the pain. And if the people providing the message are not sharing the pain, but are saying, and I'm going to cut this out of you, and you're going to take a pay cut here, and this one's not going to get the stipend for that, and this one's not going to get the stipend for that, but I shall remain whole. That is what people are hearing. And just because you're not saying, I shall remain whole, they are listening for what you are going to do, what your team and you are going to take as a cut. And that, I believe, is where they need to lead. Because when I've seen this happen in districts where I worked, and here in the many years that I've been in this district, the way you build confidence and trust is to share that pain and talk about that, as opposed to say, oh, you are going to go through this pain. No. And that's what we're hearing. Oh, I'm going to present to you how you're about to go through this pain.
Yeah.
That's sort of how it's been presented. And that is not helpful.
Yeah, and it doesn't build trust, and we know that that's a big
and every
it's a
time you
big
say
issue.
it, it becomes one more time where you are like slapping somebody's face with it.
And we have teachers who are panicked. They are panicked.
Exactly.
And so as they should
and
be.
nothing is really
so,
being done to assuage that.
Yeah.
No, they're not recognizing that level of panic, and that just shows to me a lack of maturity in how they're handling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and so it is going to play out. Things are going to happen, and these dollars are going to have to be cut one way or another. But just like everything else, your budget is a moral document, right? They just talked about adding $7 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that was big, and everybody in that meeting knew this was this was hanging over what decisions were being made, and so it is a complicated thing. There's no question about it. It's complicated, but that doesn't mean you get off the hook. There were mistakes made here, and we have to own them, and we have to be very forthcoming, because a lot of the criticisms around Measure R stem from the fact that we had come through a long period where people were beginning to say, okay, we do trust you, and now this happened. And it's how this is handled that is the biggest, as big a problem as the mistake itself.
Yeah, yeah. So this is an ongoing topic for us. We'll be giving you more and more updates as we learn more. Well, let's do a few shout outs to, I put together a self-defense workshop for some of my girls that I mentor at Richmond High. So I want to do a shout out to CVS, which is Community Violence Solutions. They actually provide services, training for free. They cover the whole county, but they did a wonderful workshop, especially Liliana Gonzalez. Thank you, Liliana, for bringing your dummy. It was called Tom, and we got to beat him up. So that was fun. And also a shout out to my partner in this, and that's Genoveva Calloway, where we just, it's just so gratifying to work with these young people. And then I want to have a shout out to the PTA. I always feel like we had a presentation about community engagement, and PTA could have been, a lot more prominent there. And Leslie Reckler does a wonderful job with our PTA. I just kind of feel like it's ignored for all that they do with our parents. That's positive things that the PTA does with our parents.
With no ulterior motive.
Yeah, yes. Hint, hint. But there you go. So that's it for me.
My final message today is for the family and friends of Jacqueline Rushing, who was the inspiration behind the Underground Railroad, which was the Young Scholars Program. And Ms. Rushing passed away this week. She had been an enormous gift to the African American children of the East Bay. She worked not only here in our district to take our students, especially our young African American men, and work with them tirelessly, and then take them on trips to the HBCUs in the South. and to stick with them, to make sure that they would continue on and find success. This was her whole life. I had the privilege of getting to know her while I was on the board, and I did work with her and support her Young Scholars Program and trying to get it to grow within our district so that we would get some of the work, the benefits that the children in Oakland, and she also worked with children in Hayward. So Ms. Rushing has passed on this week, and my deepest condolences to all of her friends and her family. So,
Absolutely.
see you next time.
Bye-bye.